The number of people commuting to work by bike is increasingly on the rise. The benefits behind riding rather than driving are endless, the most obvious being the cost saving, the health and the environmental factors. However, cycling to work does raise some questions and some potential issues like, what do you wear? How do you carry everything? What happens if it rains? And what about the traffic? And these are exactly the same questions that I had when I first started commuting to work by bike too. So today, I've teamed up with our friends and channel partners, Assos, and I'm going to be bringing you my top commuting tips to work by bike to hopefully improve the start and end to your working day. One of the most commonly asked questions with regards to commuting to work by bike is how you carry everything to and from work. Now, it does take a little bit of planning, but what I suggest you do is actually try and leave as much at work as you possibly can. Not like I quite often end up doing, and that is actually taking in a big, heavy backpack, which, trust me, really isn't that pleasant. So what you want to try and do is actually take a few changes of clothes in at the beginning of the week and leave them there. Now, our colleague Si Richardson at GCN actually has a great idea here. He gets public transport in on the Monday, takes all those clothes with him, leaves them there, and then he can commute to work by bike for the rest of the week. So our advice is try to pack light and really just take the bare minimum with you. But now, what do we actually wear for our commute? Well, I always suggest trying to layer in a way that we can easily change it depending on the temperature. For instance, my morning commute is often far cooler than my evening commute, so we want to be prepared for those changes in temperature. Now, depending on the time of the year, I often suggest that arm warmers and knee warmers are a great option because they do keep the chill off, but then can be easily removed if things do get warmer. Now, I always quite like to wear a base layer, and then depending on the time of the year, especially now when we're going into the autumn and winter, I like to layer up a little bit more. So a few extra layers, things like a long sleeve, a gilet, a raincoat like this if it is particularly cold or it is raining, and then not forgetting obviously things like your gloves, your overshoes and a hat under the helmet, all of which can be removed quite nice and easily. We can layer down if things do get warm, particularly as we're coming back in the evening. Now, something you might want to consider with your commutes is whether you use it to get some training in. Now, I quite like to just ride into work nice and easy because I need a bit of time to wake up, and then I'll use my evening commute to get a bit of a session in. And it's just a really good use of time, but you can obviously do it whichever way around you like. But this does bring us back to that layering that we were just discussing, because you're going to be warmer one way than you are the other, and also consider the fact that you may get a bit sweaty, and no one likes putting sweaty, wet gear back on again. So we want to wear some quick drying fabrics that are going to dry out nice and quickly throughout the day so that you aren't putting them back on again in the evening. But also maybe consider wearing a base layer like I was discussing before, because the purpose and idea behind a base layer is that it's the first layer. It absorbs the sweat and wicks it away from the skin, so hopefully keeping the rest of your kit fairly dry and sweat free. And conveniently, base layers tend to dry nice and quickly, so you can hang that up throughout the day and put it back on again in the evening, and it'll be nice and dry. Now, no guesses what I'm about to tell you about now, but my next tip is to make sure that you can be seen. And given that you're probably going to be commuting during rush hour, the busiest time of day on the roads, you want to give other road users the best chance of seeing you. So wearing bright colours as I'm doing right now is obviously one very good option there, but also having some reflective patches on your clothing does a very good job of increasing that visibility. Another thing to do is have some lights on your bike. In fact, in some parts of the world, that is a legal requirement. You should have a white on the front and a red on the rear after dusk and before dawn. But I go as far as saying just keep them on at all times, particularly the red rear, just to really increase your visibility. Now, this is all well and good, but the main reason behind this commute to and from work is to arrive at work. Now, you want to be arriving at work in a fit state, ready to do your job well, rather than spending the first hour sat on a radiator trying to warm yourself up. Now, obviously, you can't avoid extreme weathers or massive downpours, but you can dress suitably for them. And something like this, a rain cape, can save you if there is that big downpour. It certainly saved myself. It's going to keep your chest dry and your core nice and warm. Now, another thing to consider is actually getting a bag cover like I've got on right now. I've been using this loads for my own commutes. That's going to make sure it keeps the inners of your bag nice and dry, particularly if you're traveling in with some of your clothes as well, and also keep the bag in good condition. You may also want to start equipping your bike with some mud guards. I haven't got any right now, but we are starting to enter the rainy time of season here in the UK, so I will be popping some on. That's going to not only protect your bike, but also yourself and make the whole ride a little bit more pleasant. Now, with regards to footwear, this isn't actually something I've had to consider before, but some of my city friends have told me that they actually commute in mountain bike shoes, cleats, and pedals, simply because part of their commute actually requires them to walk or grab a train. And we all know what walking in road shoes and pedals feels like. It's rather awkward. So it's a really good option should your commute have some walking or grabbing a train in there. Final tip though is, for your work colleagues' sake, to grab a shower once you're into work, or at the very least have some baby wipes to hand, some dry shampoo and a lot of deodorant. Now, we'd love to hear from you guys about your commute into work. Perhaps even send some photos in using our photo uploader, see who's got the best commute to work maybe. If you've enjoyed today's video, make sure you hit that thumbs up button. If you'd like to see more from GTN, click on the globe and subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to see our commuter training tips video, some sessions that you can do on your commute into work, you can see that by clicking down here. If you'd like to see how to train when you're limited for time, you can see that video by clicking just down here.